Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming, and welcome back to Elden Ring and a patch of 1.09 where things have changed a reasonable amount. Big changes to certain weapons to make them much better, and a few nerfs and knockdowns, especially for thrusting type of weapons. Today we're going over my top picks overall, so as always we have S, A, B and C, and if it even makes it onto the list, even if it's a C tier weapon, I still consider it one of the best picks in the game. With that said then, let's begin from the bottom, and we're going to start with the Black Knife, which I think we can get through pretty quick. This is a top tier weapon due to the fact that I think it's the best applier of Destined Death. A quick ranged attack on the Ash of War that applies a 10% health debuff, damage over time, and a nice burst of damage overall in general. It's a very good scaling dex weapon, and daggers are kind of nuts right now with their attack range being improved, and of course the attack speed, which is so good. As a non-bleed dagger, it doesn't have the same burst as a bleed dagger, but that Destined Death effect is so good that it deserves to be here. Another weapon that deserves to be here has just made it onto the list, the Great Club. With the new update in 1.09, this now has holy damage and holy scaling, so basically it just does more damage. Its Ash of War, the Golden Land, is actually a great trading machine in PvP and allows you for some ranged options even in the open world. Undeniably, the performance and AR of this weapon is good, but the downsides that keep it down in C is ultimately the fact that it's got holy damage. That falls off so hard in Elden Ring's current version, where the endgame bosses, they're so resistant to holy damage. Also, the moveset of this weapon is incredibly bland. It's just basically just a singular bonk, but it performs well generally, and it's also a great PvP pick. Down to C then, this might surprise you, the Bolt of Grandsex. Again, I think this is a really good weapon, that's why it's on the list, but contextually, I just think it's got nerfed pretty hard. Over the last patches, they've been really nerfing thrust damage. So thrusting weapon counterattack damage, that's worse in PvP, and in this patch, they've even reduced the hitbox size for some attacks, with the spear specifically. Not to forget all the poise changes, affecting spears and spear types noticeably. So while it still does great damage, and has good scaling, and an awesome Ash of War, it's being specifically nerfed as a type of weapon repeatedly, and I think that's definitely taken some kind of effect. Much like the last C tier weapon that we're going to talk about, the Cross Naginata spears, which were once absolute monsters when you combine them with something as simple and powerful as seppuku. Its thrusting moveset isn't amazing for AoE situations in the open world, but say in boss fights or PvP, it was an absolute monster. Now that there's been some noticeable nerfs to seppuku on how much health it takes, and also bleed builds in general with the White Mask and the Talisman associated no longer giving you as much AR. Now it's just a really solid, say, keen weapon and still works with a bleed build, but nowhere near as broken or dominant as it once was. Still a good pick, but yeah, just not that versatile and weakened where it was strong. Next though, we move up to B tier where we start with the Knight Rider Glaive. Halberds has been improved and nerfed this patch. There was this slight nerf to the hitbox size of certain halberd attacks, but very importantly, they really increased the running attack speed and also improved this weapon's recovery time on various attacks. Now it's just feeling a lot smoother because of that, and for say trading in PvP, those running attacks really open opportunities. Combine that with an Ash of War that has good hyper armor, like Loretta's Slash here, and that could be an incredible combo. It's also just an S scaling strength weapon, so a strength weapon with a unique moveset compared to say bonking or colossal swords, and this works in many different builds and playstyles because of that. As far as halberds go, it's a top tier pick, but I also don't think it's crazy, broken, mega strong, so B feels fair. A weapon that's feeling really good this patch is the curved greatsword Morgoth's Cursed Blade. In this patch, they made it so the Ash, the damage detection of the cursed sort of strike part, that pops and comes out much quicker. And I've got to say, it feels incredible, especially in PvP where people would often just avoid that pop. Now it consistently hits them and has some surprising range to it. That is because it's also a curved greatsword. In this patch, they've increased the speed, the range of these attacks, and recovery time of some attacks as well. And that allows for some incredible combos like this one, where you're doing a light attack or a running attack using the Ash of War, which comes out so quick now and gap closes, and then because of the better recovery you can go straight into say a light attack which comes out really quick and reaches further, which can be comboed into another Ash and so on. So honestly, just using this weapon for its PvP purposes and this sort of infinite really powerful fast combo, really good. And you can do the damn same thing of course in PvE where you're dealing with a boss and just spamming the Ash of War or doing that sick combo I just mentioned. So this is in a really good place now and certainly deserves to be noticed as one of the stronger weapons in the game. But overall I think B is fair enough, but with how it performs in PvP, you could consider it an A in that aspect. Another weapon massively changed over time is of course Rivers of Blood, which I still think is, you know, strong overall. It's been destroyed in terms of its power. I still think this is a great PvE pick because, you know, there's no mind games, you just press against the enemy. As long as you're hitting with the sword and the Ash of War, it still does good damage, still does good bleed build up, but at the same time, again, bleed builds have been nerfed. White Mask and the Talisman They no longer give you as much AR when they pop, but I still think it's a great pick and it has great power behind it, especially with builds that say work it into it rather than rely upon it. Also in B tier, basically because of how it performs in PvE versus PvP, is the Mariahs Executioner Sword. This is a PvE focused machine where you're corkscrewing away health bars in milliseconds. It's one of the highest, if not the highest DPS weapon in PvE for that purpose, and it's a rare case of an arcane weapon that doesn't rely on bleed damage to do all of its damage. In PvP, you can make it work. You know, this weapon type, the Greatsword, has been improved. It just doesn't hit mega hard unless you hit with the Corkscrew Ash of War, which is unlikely to get the full thing off. Still, it can work and is fun when it does. Lastly, in B tier then, Moogs Spear, another thrusting Great Spear type which has been nerfed. The hitbox size of some attacks, with specifically the Great Spear, that's been reduced, and as a bleed weapon, again, the AR reductions on White Mask and the Talisman, that's impactful here, and the range of the Ash of War was slightly reduced a few patches ago. It's still very strong, dealing good damage, feeling great. The Ash of War still has great range. What it does really well. It's just they've consistently reduced the power of this weapon type and this bleed type in specific. Used to be an A, now it's a B, basically. Next though, we have A tier, where I'm going to put the Scavenger curved swords safely in, up from a B from last time. That's because they've improved this patch. For some reason, this weapon type, the curved swords, well, they've improved the running attack speed, the recovery time on that, and the first attack of the weapon overall is quicker too. I don't really know, I thought these were pretty damn good. Obviously, power stance weapons with stats build up, they've been nerfed in their power and output, and this is kind of the #1 weapon for that. But to improve its base moveset, well, it's become really scary to deal with as a weapon type, and it must be acknowledged as being better in this patch, and it's feeling great. Whether you're doing jump attacks, which were nerfed slightly but still good, or whether you're doing a bleed build, or any status build, this is going to be a great pick. Much like another curved sword going into A tier, the Wing of Estelle. Again, it receives the same curved sword benefits, so it's great with power stance, running attacks, and so on. It's not relying upon status, so it's a great option, and as an int weapon, it's top tier. You have that unique heavy attack, which, without costing any FP, does magic damage at medium range, which is incredible. The Ash of War is a really high DPS spammer in PvE, and a great utility tool in PvP. This thing is versatile, it's effective, it's one of the best int weapons, and it's A tier because I just don't think it's broken, I just think it's fantastic. Just like Moonveil, also in A tier. As a katana type, this was buffed to have increased running attack speed and reduce the recovery time of that, which is nice, but the main aspect of this is obviously the Ash of War, the heavy specific version of that. It's still super good and a PvP slayer, but it's also not as crazy as it once was, and not really PvE machine monster anymore. It's reliable and it's a great source of magic damage, and I still strongly recommend it, and I still see it all the time, but it's just never really going to compare to what it once was, which was arguably the best weapon in the game during the original launch of the game. Next up, we have Naga Kibo in the A tier, which I think is a universal top tier dex weapon. I was going to put this in S tier, but honestly, I think a lot of the builds revolve around bleed due to the Blood Flame Blade buff. That has been nerfed and fixed in this patch, where you can no longer use that to buff your weapon and then use ranged Ashes of War to deal bleed damage. That's been removed. There are so many ways to work this weapon, and again, katanas have been improved. It's a long, heavy hitting dex weapon, so it's absolutely fantastic still. It's just without the craziness of the Blood Flame as much. Works more as a foundation to build something awesome on than it being inherently broken itself. Still, it's a top tier pick, and that's why it is in A tier, and it's universally great with so many builds. Finally, for A tier, we have the Bloodhound Fang, which is pretty much the best early game weapon that you can get at the very beginning of the game in South Limgrave, and the Ash of War hits like a truck. Even just the first part, let alone the follow-up dash forward, is so good and comes out so quick. Just like Morgoth's then, this is a curved greatsword where they've increased the speed, range, and recovery time for various attacks. So this is feeling smooth and combo-centric. Works great in power stance, works incredible on its own, and again, you can get it really early. For many people, this was the #1 weapon they used for their entire first playthrough for good reason, and now it's stronger. It's buffable, it's got inherent bleed, and its moveset is now better. So those of you that like to use this weapon as their main thing, whether it's PvE or PvP, you can rejoice because it's even better than it once was. Finally though, we come to the S tier, where we'll be quick because you can see these weapons, you know what's coming. First up, the Blasphemous Blade, arguably the best weapon overall. It's got all of the benefits of fire damage, of lifesteal on hit, of healing on kill, of an incredible Ash of War with long range, which is wide, which knocks people down, which deals really good damage, which is just an incredible weapon that works in so many builds. It's overtuned and overfilled with passive benefits, and all it's really done since, 1.0 is get better with minor improvements to the weapon type and this weapon as a whole. Also in S tier still is Roduvia. As I mentioned, it's a dagger with those massive buffs in 1.8, and for some reason in 1.9, daggers were left alone, where claws and fists were adjusted. Daggers were the best in my opinion, and they are certainly still the best now. As a bleed build-up weapon, you're going to destroy with DPS and burst. Even if that's slightly reduced this patch with the white mask and the talisman, it's still ridiculously good. The Asher Wall was buffed last patch to have damage detection on the blade itself, so if you use it up close, it's like a shotgun burst. So whether you're using the power stance weapon moveset, whether you're relying on the Ash, or mixing it up with both, it's going to be a top tier pick in PvE and PvP. Next then is the Darkmoon Greatsword, which is pretty much the heaviest hitting ranged option without actually requiring FP. You just buff up, that costs FP, and then from there on it's stamina. You can fully charge it and there's so many ways to enhance that damage, leading to 5 or 6k hit damage a hit in PvE with the full charge. In PvP, it works incredibly as a mind game machine, because you can just tap it to send out a quick arc wave, or charge it and catch someone panic rolling. Either way, it'll hit like a truck, and this weapon type, the Greatsword, just gets better and better every patch for some reason. I absolutely love this weapon, and it's still S tier. Next up, we have the Greatsword. Much like the Naga Kibo, it's kind of a universal weapon, but instead for strength. Colossal swords have had massive improvements to the poise that they're dealing. The crouch poke, which was the strongest part of it, was over nerfed and then buffed, so it's in a really good place again. The damage it can deal is wonderful, and again, it's a universal weapon. You can use so many different Ashes of War, you can buff it in so many different ways. It works in so many different strength-based builds. With good range, great damage, big poise damage, it remains an incredible pick for whatever type of playstyle you're looking for. Last but not least then, for S tier, we still have the Giant's Crusher. I found this even more reliable these days for whatever reason. A colossal weapon, it's just got big damage and big stagger. It's a trading machine in PvP with high poise builds. When it comes to PvE, it has a unique attack where you do the front flip slam, and that does ridiculous damage. It remains the weapon that deals the most damage in one hit, and you can easily work simple builds in to deal 5-6k damage a hit while being very tanky and resistant with high poise yourself. It works in PvP very well as long as you're using it to trade. It does have a bit of a bland moveset, but with what it's trying to do, it does it the best out of any weapon. But there you have it. We have our complete list for 1.09. That's quite a lot of weapons that I think are absolutely fantastic. And while there's obviously been some specific adjustments, for some reason thrust weapons are really getting shafted and bleed builds being weakened, but still very good. I'm happy to see the meta change a little bit. Things have shifted up a bit, but let me know if there's any weapons that you've been trying that feel really good. Let me know why, so I can try it and maybe include it in the next one. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.